Hey viewers, my name's Cara. Welcome to November, and welcome to what I hope is going to be a fun little helpful video today about just really basic astrology stuff. So I was actually going to do this video last week, but the end of October was just crazy, which I think is the case for a lot of witches. Just because of the season, but also it's starting to be like cold and flu season, so my partner was not feeling well, so I was doing a lot of just focusing on stuff around the house. But I am happy to finally bring this video to you. I am using my new ability to capture web pages, do some screen capturing, since we have a capture card now, to bring you a little video about basic astrology. So this will be fun. This was actually inspired by Jenna Marbles and Julien Solomita, who about a year ago on their podcast, the Jenna Julien podcast, they did an episode going through their birth charts and reading about themselves through their birth chart. And they did use one of my favorite websites that provides free birth chart reports, which is Cafe Astrology. So that is the one that I'm going to be using today. It's the one that I've always recommended. I'm not sponsored by them. I get absolutely nothing out of this, and what I'm recommending to you is a free report, so you don't pay for it either. I just happen to really like it. I've always preferred the way that their charts and tables look when they're generated, and I have always found the explanations really helpful. But I decided to do this video because I noticed in the podcast that Jenna and Julien were using the same website that I always use, but they were very confused about a lot of things and what different aspects of the chart mean and just where to find certain information. Because even if you're reading it, I mean, there's a lot of information on here, so I know some people who sponsor my Patreon, I've already been talking about this with them for a while, and they said, like, yeah, I read these things, but even if you do read it, sometimes it's just very confusing. So having another explanation can be helpful, and hopefully that's what I'm going to give you here today. I am not an expert in astrology by any means, but I have been using this website in particular for a number of years to help people find out their very basic astrology stuff. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Just super basics. So I'm going to bring up the webpage here, and I'm going to leave this little section up here above me sort of blank. Maybe I'll just put a little sun and moon design in there, but I'm going to leave it in case there's anything else that I want to like pop up a note on the screen later, so we're going to use that. So this is the Cafe Astrology free birth chart situation. It's actually found at astro.cafeastrology.com/natal.php, natal, N-A-T-A-L, which is another word for your birth chart. Your natal chart is your birth chart, the chart based on the planets and the sun and the moon and the stars at the moment you were born. So anyway, if you go to this free birth chart entry here, which is what they used, you put in your information. It does now have a third gender neutral pronoun option, and that's just used for when it puts out the report and you read about the type of person who has these things in their chart. It's just so it knows which pronoun you would prefer to read. You can put in your name, and they recommend that you use an initial or a nickname. I'm just going to make a sample chart today, so I'm just going to put sample. We can go ahead and use the birthday that's already in here, which is January 1st, 2000, or I'm going to go ahead and make it like 1980, January 11th. I don't know whose birthday this is, but if this is your birthday, cool. This is just random. Now, you have to know your birth time and location of birth to get certain things in your chart, such as your ascendant or rising sign and an accurate moon sign. And also, I believe that affects whether or not you get the information about the houses. So down below here, time zone, not sure. Okay, that's if the time zone that it's in isn't sure. Here, unknown birth time. If you check off that the time is unknown, it instructs the program to leave out the ascendant and the house positions, as these cannot be determined with any accuracy without a birth time. They will give you an estimated moon sign if you don't know the exact time, or if you just use like 12 noon, but it might be different because the moon changes signs every couple of days, and it sometimes changes signs throughout the middle of the day. So on any one given day, the moon could be in one sign in the morning and another sign in the evening. So you can get a basic estimate, but yeah. So let's just say like 3 p.m. 3:50. So almost 4 p.m. And a birthplace, let's just say New York. So you want to put in just the city and let it come up with all the options and then click the one that you want. Yep, cool. And in English is great. Submit. So this is just a sample. I don't know whose birthday this is, who was actually born at that time in that place on that day, but yeah. Okay, so here we're scrolling down. We get your natal chart report. It explains a lot of stuff here. You're going to get positions of planets by sign, sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, etc. Most people already know their sun sign. When people ask you, what's your zodiac sign? The one that you say, the one that's based on your birthday throughout the year, that's your sun sign, because that's based on where the sun was at the time you were born. So that's the one that most people know of as their sign. And then this is going to tell us a whole bunch of other ones. Okay, so going down here, we have our name here, which is just sample, pronoun they. New York, New York, January 11th, 1980 at 15:50 or 3:50 p.m. Yeah, so just a little sample here. So this sample person's sun sign is in Capricorn because that is the sign that the sun was in when they were born in January. Their moon was in Scorpio, Mercury was also in Capricorn, etc., etc. So this is just giving us a table right now. And these are the planetary symbols. It also talks about the north and south nodes and other things, satellites and asteroids and things like that. And that gets a little bit beyond basics. So it does explain it on here too, that like this word, I don't even know what that word means, but this is now referring to the houses. So the sign in your first house, let me drink some tea here. Shout outs to Kellyanna, my I Walk with the Goddess mug. The sign that's in your first house, this ASC here, means that is what we call the ascendant. And you'll see as we scroll down and get below, I'll show you more of what that actually means. But your ascendant sign or your rising sign is also your first house, second house, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So if you have heard the song from the musical Hair, when the moon is in the seventh house, this is what it's referring to. But of course here, we're not seeing what planets are in the houses. This chart is giving us which signs are in the house. So I'll show you when we get down below how to see which actual planet is in which house. But that's what it's referring to. These are houses. It's the way that the cosmos is kind of divided up. Oh, here we go. Yeah, and then it's saying they've changed these a little bit. I don't remember seeing this chart before. So there is now a chart that tells you the planets in the houses right away. Cool. Oh, so I'm going to want to redo mine and save that on my phone. Yeah, so what I do is I actually go to this website on my mobile device, and then I take screenshots of the charts, and I keep them in a folder on my phone, like an album in my gallery of photos called Astrology, and that's where I keep my screenshots of these charts. Just a little tip there. Oh, look at that. And it's also now telling us how many masculine and feminine energy related things, how many cardinal, fixed, mutable, and how many of each of the elements. Okay, so they've updated this a little bit. This is kind of exciting for me because I'm a nerd. Then it talks about the aspects. It tells you what that means generally. So an aspect is when a planet is in a specific relationship to another planet. And again, this will make even more sense when we get down below to the big circular chart. This just gives you the tables first. So let's just hurry on down there. So it lists all of the aspects for you. This information over here is very technical and not necessary if you're just looking at a very basic understanding. So don't let that stuff confuse you or freak you out. It's not something, I don't understand this. You don't need to know all of that to understand your basic astrology stuff. So don't worry. Fortune and the South Node again. And this website has links that'll go to other pages that tell you more about some of these things that are a little bit beyond the basics. Then it gets into your actual, wait, where is the circular chart? Because now this is going right into the, there it is. My goodness, they put it all the way at the bottom. Okay, so this is different because this is all of our written out explanations. So way down here at the bottom is the actual circular chart. All right, so this is actually what I want to show you that'll like help sort of make sense of things. And then you have this chart here that kind of looks like a multiplication chart that also is showing you your aspects. So for example here, the square is here, which is just a little shorthand reminding you that Venus, this is the sign for Venus, is square Uranus or Uranus. Here we see that Jupiter is conjunct with Mars. So those are just little shorthands and they tell you what these symbols are here. So what the heck did I just say, right? So we come up here. I just said here we see Jupiter conjunct Venus, and conjunct refers to being very close together within a certain amount of degrees. And this is why I like these charts, because it'll tell you if they consider it conjunct. So you don't actually have to do all the math to create this chart and then measure it and say, okay, is it close enough to be considered a conjunction? Because we see here Jupiter and Venus are very close together. So this down here tells us that it is considered conjunct. And then further up in the typed out examples, it explains what all that stuff means. And then what was the other one I pointed out? Mercury square Uranus. So here's, I'm like pointing at the screen. I have to point with my with my cursor. Oh, here's the symbol for Uranus. And here is the symbol for Venus. And we can see here there's this pink line joining them that forms a square here. So that's what all of these lines in here are kind of color coded, and that's about these aspects of how they relate. So the little star means that it's sextile. So if you divide this space up into 6, so you can see these green lines here are kind of like dividing it into 6. Things that fall within that relationship are sextile. Trine is if they form a triangle between them. Square is if they form a square. Things like that. But your ascendant sign, so here it calculates it for you. Here's your ascendant. This is where house 1 begins, and then it goes down. So you can see here a very tiny Roman numeral 2. So from here to here is the first house, and that's where we get that the first house is Cancer, and that's the ascendant sign then. So this person's ascendant is Cancer. It's a little annoying now that we have to go all the way back up to check that. So their ascendant is Cancer. Cancer is also their second house. But then down here we see, yeah, there were no planets in that area. So there's no planets in their second house. But we see here from the table that there are several in the third house. The North Node, Jupiter, and Mars. So if we go all the way back down to our thing here, the third house is from the Roman numeral 3 down to the Roman numeral 4, and we do indeed see that Jupiter is there as well as Venus, or Mars. That's Mars. The 4th house they have here, 5th house, 6th house, 7th house, 8th, 9th house, and then the 10th house begins here where it says MC. I forget what that stands for, but another name for it is the midheaven. And that is also explained elsewhere. It's a little bit more than basic. But that begins your 10th house, and then 11th house, 12th house brings us right back. And as you can see, they're not exactly even. Some of them are very small, some of them are wider. This chart calculates that for you. So in the old days, you would have had, decades ago, you would have had to go to an astrologer or learn how to do this yourself. And there are lots of older books that walk you through this process of like how to actually calculate it and go through tables to find out where the planets were and plot this map, like create this chart yourself by hand. I don't know about you, but I don't think we all have time for that. So I like that this chart just gives it to you. So it does look super confusing, but this is what we're going to talk about. So let's just start by looking for the real basic stuff. And again, if you only want to know the super basics, it's in those tables that we saw first thing. So we saw that the sun was in Capricorn, and on this big chart here, we look for the symbol that's the sun. Down here it tells you it's the circle with a dot in the middle. So this is the sun, and it has a little line here telling us, and this is Capricorn. So this person's sun is in Capricorn. Their moon is down here. The moon is in Scorpio. And their ascendant sign, as we mentioned over here, the rising sign, is Cancer. And the way that that is determined is that it's the sign that was rising over the horizon when you were born. So that's what that actually refers to, or ascendant, the sign that was ascending over the horizon. So that's how you basically look at this kind of thing. You just find the symbol for the planet, see which sign it's connected to, and then all of these colorful lines in the middle that look like such a mess are shorthand for your aspects here. This one with the two open circles connected by a line is when they're in opposition. So you can see here it's like things that are directly opposite. So Mercury is directly opposite the ascendant. Yeah, Mercury opposition ascendant, and Venus in opposition to the midheaven, or the MC. Again, I forget what that stands for right now, but we're going to go all the way back up here now. Sun is in Capricorn, moon is in Scorpio, ascendant is Cancer. Those are the three big ones that a lot of people want to know. And then other things, Mercury has to do with things that we consider qualities of Mercury: communication, travel, things like that, the intellect. So it might be like the way you solve problems, the way you communicate, the way that you are in business. Your Venus sign will inform things related to love, and so like how you are in relationships. Mars has to do with kind of, well, you know, it explains it all down here. So let's look at it. The sun represents vitality, sense of individuality, and outward shining creative energy. We think of the sun as being like your general personality, which is why so many people ask, like, what's your zodiac sign? Or basically, what's your sun sign? Because that's considered your overall personality. But it is tempered, and all of these other things are dependent on all of these other signs. So somebody with sun in Capricorn, but moon in Libra and Venus in Taurus is going to be very different than this sample hypothetical person who has moon in Scorpio, Venus in Aquarius, you know. So all of these things do affect the others, and that's one thing to keep in mind when reading sites like this, because what this website is doing is just giving you right here, like, this is the explanation of sun in Capricorn. That's it. It's not looking at, here's how that's affected by the moon in, Scorpio. It's just giving you snippets of this exact thing. You know, so some things within it will make sense, some things will seem to contradict other things, and that's because websites like this are only giving you stock information of here's what this sign or this planet means in this sign, or here's what this planet means in this house. But it's not interpreting it for you, and that's where you can still benefit from, if you have the desire and if you have the financial ability to, going to a professional astrologer and paying for an advanced report where they will actually help you interpret how do these things work together. Or if you're like me, you just do your best with your basic knowledge of these things to determine how each thing influences the other. But yeah. So it's going through, here's what that sextile means, that aspect of the two. The moon represents emotional responses, unconscious predestination, and self-image, represents the emotions, and the moon sign shows how a person expresses themselves when at home, at ease, and comfortable. We also sometimes think of the moon as our inner self. So if the sun is our outer self that we display to the world, or our outward personality, the moon is our internal mechanisms and how we are inside our own head. A step beyond that, the ascendant sign, let me just scroll down to that. Here is the explanation of all the houses. So here's where we get into our ascendant, because the ascendant is the first house. So we get down here. House 1 is the area of self-identity. The ascendant is a symbol of how one acts in life, image of the personality as seen by others, and the attitude that one has toward life. So this is what I was trying to say before, as the sun is considered our personality and kind of how we generally are in the world, the ascendant or rising sign is seen as sort of the mask that we wear, that we really display first impressions that we give to other people. So this person's ascendant is Cancer. That is actually mine as well. So it talks about, because Cancer is it's water, it's considered very like caring, gentle, homebody type of sign. It talks about how ascendant and Cancer people come across as gentle. There's something familiar about them. They don't walk in with a splash. They move to the sides and weave their way in. They have a familiar feel. And things like this definitely apply to me down here. Usually these people appear unassuming enough to be quite approachable. I cannot tell you how many times I am in a place and people come up to me to ask me questions. They assume I work there, or they assume that I know what I'm talking about. Like, I don't know what it is that I give off, but it could be something like this, that I just seem very approachable to people. And that's, so the ascendant or the rising sign is talking about that kind of thing, how we initially appear to other people and kind of the mask that we wear that people see first before getting to know our actual personality and like intrinsically who we are, which is our sun sign, and then those slightly even more hidden aspects and emotions and inner workings that are the moon sign. So those are the three main ones that you're really going to want to look for if you just want to know about that basic stuff, you know. Then it talks about Cancer in house 2. It describes what each of the houses cover as well. So the second house is material security and values. It rules money and personal finances. And then it tells you, here's what that means with that sign in that house. So that's what the houses are. That was really confusing to Jenna and Julien when they were looking at this, because when you just start up here, it's just these Roman numerals, and you're like, what is that? You know, it doesn't say house up here, and it doesn't explain what the houses are. So yeah, that was a little confusing for them. This little R over here as well means that these planets were retrograde at the time of this hypothetical person's birth. And then it talks about what that might mean. But yeah, so if you want to go super basics, all you really have to look at is like your sun and moon and the first house here, ascendant. Those are your three main ones that you'll see a lot of people like listing what their signs are. It'll be typically sun, moon, ascendant. Rising is just another name for ascendant. I saw someone asked in the comments of Jenna and Julien's video, like, what's the difference between the moon sign and the ascendant sign? Because they just had never gotten a clear answer on that before. And so, yeah, all of these signs are the sign, basically the area of the cosmos that houses the constellation named after these signs. It's a certain amount of degrees in the sky, in the cosmos, that when a planet is in that area, it is considered to be in that sign. And so here it's showing us that the sun was in the sign of Capricorn. It was in that area of the heavens, if you will. I prefer the cosmos. At the time that this person was born, the moon was in the sign of Scorpio, and Cancer was the sign rising or ascending on the horizon when they were born. So that's where you find them on the chart. And depending on who you are, they could be, anywhere. You just have to look for the symbol. That's the sun, moon, and the ascendant is labeled with the AS, and it's also the beginning of house 1. So the ascendant sign is always going to be this one over here on the left in these calculated charts online. And then the houses go down from here. First house to second, second to third, third to fourth. So you look for the little Roman numerals, and they progress this way, down below the horizon, and then up as you're counting. So from the 8 to the 9, the space in between there is the 8th house. So that's how you would find those things on the actual chart if you don't want to look at the tables above. This again is shorthand for all of those aspects, which are things that you might be interested in, but again is even a step beyond basics. Super basics is just look at these tables and look at those 3. And then once you kind of have a grasp of that, then you might be interested in like, okay, well, what is my Mercury sign and how does my Venus sign affect the way that I am in relationships, whether that be romantic relationships or just relationships with other people? How do I interact with people? That might, something about your Venus sign might help you understand that about yourself, etc. So this birth chart gives you a lot more information than what is basic, but you only have to look at certain things. So real quick, I'm just going to select some other random information just to give you another example of a chart. So this person's sun is in Libra, moon is in Cancer, their ascendant sign is Virgo, all this other information, aspects. Let's go all the way down to that big chart because so as you can see, everything looks different. This person doesn't have any planets over on this side of the chart, and they look pretty evenly spaced throughout here, actually, which is interesting. And then you can see all the lines in the center that are connecting and showing you those aspects, the way that the different planets are positioned relative to one another. That looks very different on here. And also this person's midheaven line is really running quite perpendicular to the ascendant like horizon line, which on the previous one it wasn't perfectly in quadrants like that. Their midheaven line was kind of more diagonal like this. So it's really personal to you and your specific information. And again, if you don't know the birth time and stuff, I'll do a sample one of those real quick so we can see. It won't be able to tell you the ascendant, and your moon sign might not be super accurate. So yeah, here, just looking at this person's sun is in Libra, their moon, where's their moon? Their moon is in Cancer, their ascendant over here is Virgo. So let's do one with an unknown time. Well, yeah, let's just use the same one that I just did, 18th of October, 1962, with an unknown time, and they were born in Los Angeles, which I believe the location is also only relevant so that they know the time zone that you were born in so that it adjusts. Because they have to know, 4 a.m. in which time zone. That makes a difference. So it calculates it for itself and then gives you the correct information. So if we don't know the time, we still have Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, because these are all things that stay in the same sign for a while. The moon sign may not be completely accurate because the moon does change signs every couple of days, but it might be accurate. You can look up on what day the moon changed signs on other websites, or like if you have I have the moon phase app on my phone. This is the widget. This thing. You can look up a specific date on that. It's just called the Phases of the Moon app. I have it on Android. And there's also a website associated with it too if you don't have a mobile device or don't want to use apps or anything. So you can look up the date that the moon changed signs and see if it really was in that sign on your birthday or if it changed signs. And then you can look up more of that particularly to see. But all the rest of these are they're in a sign for a while. So it'll be fairly accurate on that. And then you see it skips right from here to the aspects because it can't give you your ascendant or any of your houses. Well, let's go down and see what the chart actually looks like. Yeah, so there's a lot less here because it does not have the demarcations of the, what am I trying to say? It doesn't have the houses separated into where they're supposed to be. They're not marked. And they don't know what sign is the ascendant, because if you don't know where the houses begin, you don't know, if you don't know the time, you don't know what sign was rising at that time. So we don't have that information here. But you can still get basic information about the planets and the relationships between them, these aspects down here, and you can still see your sun and your moon and yeah, all your basic planets. So that's what the chart looks like if you don't know the time of birth. So if at all possible, contact someone who was around when you were born and try to find out what time you were born if that is something that you want to know that you don't know already. So your sun sign, your moon sign, your ascendant or rising sign, they are separate considerations, but they might be the same thing. You might come across a chart, someone might have a chart where their ascendant and their sun or their moon were the same. Some people's sun and moon sign are the same. If you were born around a new moon, your sun and moon sign would be the same because new moons occur when the moon and the sun are on the same side of Earth and in line, so they would be the same sign at that point. And then the full moons occur when the sun and the moon are aligned with each other but on opposite sides of Earth. So in those cases, the moon is in whatever sign is directly opposite of the sun's sign in the zodiac. So you absolutely can have a lot of these be the same. You could have multiple planets that were aligned in the same sign in your chart. And so I think that may be what causes confusion for some people, because some people might have their ascendant and their moon sign might be the same, but the way that each of those things is determined are actually separate. So it's dependent on where the actual planet or moon, as it may be, where it actually was when you were born, and your ascendant, etc., depends on the time, and the location has to do with the time zone. I hope that by the time I get around to editing this, it will seem a lot clearer. I wanted this to just be about really basic stuff, but there is a lot of extra stuff available on this website that is kind of, if you're looking at basics, just push it to the side. Don't worry about it. It can seem really overwhelming, and I admit that because I was trying to explain a lot of the things that you'll see as you're scrolling down, it probably seemed a lot more complicated than it was until we got into the basic stuff, because I was trying to do it in order, and it does give you tables fairly early on that have a lot of information that you may not be concerned with whatsoever. So hopefully through editing, I have made this seem less complicated and explained some of the basics, such as what are these signs, where do we find them, how does the chart work, as far as finding that really basic information, and then, you know, finding that that really basic explanation here that they give you about what all of those different things mean. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. I will see you next time. Until then, don't forget to be awesome. Blessed be, and goodbye. You can let us know what your basic signs are in the comments if you'd like to share. Have a good one.